How one company stops you from owning a house.
In days, Airbnb was a dream come true. It let people on a budget avoid dodgy hostels and overpriced hotels, whilst giving people with spare rooms a way to make a little extra cash on the side. It threatened to change the hotel and holiday industry forever, but a little over a decade later, and it's all gone down the track. To change the hotel and holiday industry forever, but a little over a decade later.
POV, you're staying in the middle of NYC for less than $50 per night because you were following my travel hacks. NYC for less than $50 a night? Cap.
And it's all gone down.
Oh, damn. I tried to see the... This is your sign to book a B&B in Manhattan. Oh. Ugh. Yeah, about to say B&Bs nowadays.
Gone down the drain. Nearly every reason to use Airbnb has slowly been eroded by higher prices and awful customer service. If that's not bad enough...
Puzzleville awful, cancel my reservation for a matter of 2 days because of the possible deadline. Yeah, bro, there's like weird policies and shit they got on there now, bro. It's weird.
Airbnb has only made the housing shortage worse and decimated the hotel industry, whilst giving people nothing in return. So how did this happen? And what's the future of the short-term rental market?
Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. New York is going to begin enforcing a new law that regulates Airbnb rentals in New York. It happens today, and some say it could amount to an effective ban on short-term rentals.
Kelly, maybe it's 10,000 doors closing when you talk about Airbnb. Wow. They have about 40,000 listings. Some say it's going to be 10,000, maybe over 20,000 listings that disappear after today.
If you look at the news, it's becoming clear that Airbnb is in a very tricky situation right now. On the one hand, it's enjoying the remarkable success that's never seen before, but on the other, it's wrestling with a growing wave of anger, frustration from both hosts and guests, and now even governments. So much so that the CEO Brian Chesky has openly stated he acknowledged the tens of thousands of complaints across social media, primarily focused on the platform's increasing costiness. People are unhappy. People are being gentrified. Society is turning more and more to short-term rentals, and backlashes against this are happening all across the world, with several cities taking steps to regulate short-term rentals now. Particularly New York, one of Airbnb's largest markets in the US, recently initiated measures to restrict and regulate the platform, effectively enforcing a de facto ban on Airbnb.
Well, to understand this, we need to go back to the year 2007, to Brian Chesky and his roommate, Joe Gebbia. Brian and Joe were broke, and they needed money to pay rent because they were close to being evicted from their apartment in San Francisco. Strapped for cash and taking on any opportunity they could, Brian Chesky came up with an idea. After speaking to somebody who was attending a conference near their place, the person he was speaking to flew into San Francisco and was complaining about how all the cheaper hotels were fully booked and that he couldn't afford a more expensive one. To many, that just sounds like a typical complaint. There's nothing you can really do about it. But to Brian, this was a problem that needed a solution. So Brian and Joe rented out air mattresses in their apartment to some attendees of the conference, charging just $80 each night. Bargain for San Francisco. And this means they could also pay their rent now, which made them incredibly excited. They could share out their house like a hotel and pay off the rent. With their excitement buzzing, they would call on their friend Nathan, and the trio opened up a new business venture, setting up a site called Air, Bed and Breakfast and listed their properties. Now, getting everything ready to run took time, but it was
Airbnb stands for Air, Bread, and Breakfast? What? That's a plot twist, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
and Chase were excited, but the excitement was short-lived. Whilst the idea was brilliant and revolutionary, Air, Bed and Breakfast only had 2 users, and Chase was one of them. They launched another conference, SXSW, and they would receive 2 bookings, which didn't really paint the best picture of what their business could become, and it would in no way pay for the rent. So they took one step back, and so after working it all out over the next year in August 2008, Airbnb.com was launched just before the Democratic National Convention in Denver, when Chase and Nathan and Joe went door to door, asking who would be interested in listing and hosting their homes for some money. They explained that this was Obama supporters helping Obama supporters, and they started marketing where they could. The idea was to cater to the thousands of people who came to the convention. And while they didn't hit the 1,000 mark, over 600 people stayed at Airbnb during the convention. A success for the trio. But right after this, they were already receiving criticism for what the service truly is, as TechCrunch released an article about the service and its success, and one of the top comments pointed out the fallacies in the idea. This is typical echo chamber thinking. Do people get robbed, abused, raped, or murdered using these kinds of services? Of course not, because right now, these services are only used by a small, very specific demographic that doesn't include the kind of people that are gonna rob, abuse, murder, or rape someone. If this ever becomes mainstream, the whole thing will come crashing down. The kind of people that do rob, abuse, rape, and murder people will start using the systems, and that will spread legitimate fear, corrupting the entire thing. Pray that this remains underground. That's the only way it can survive. And although these were some valid points, the founders were determined determined to turn Airbnb into a success. Chase and his partners continued going door to door, asking homeowners to sign up. If they didn't sign up, at least they knew about the service, so it was worth the effort. And to be fair, Airbnb started off as a great way to save on costs while traveling. The app provided accommodation at a very cheap cost, where you could either stay with someone in their home, but you would have your own room, or you could rent out a private living space for the short term. Sometimes listings would give you an entire house, making it a viable option for families. And this idea was extremely successful because by March 2009, the site had over 2,500 home listings and nearly 10,000 registered users. Things just continued from there, and the founders started marketing wherever they could. Over the next 2 years, the website garnered over 1 million bookings, compared to the start of popping up.
I don't think I heard about Airbnb until like 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. Like, it wasn't in its early days, I'll tell you that.
It was so successful because Airbnb barely had to do anything at first. All they were doing was connecting homeowners with short-term guests, something impossible to do on a global scale until the technology was there. They were the eBay of holidays, only having to step in when things went wrong. But unlike eBay, a whole lot more could go wrong with housing and staying in a foreign country. At first it was manageable, but over time the sheer volume of complaints and issues became unbearable.
Airbnb was... It's global. Dang, I didn't even think about that. You can get a B&B in like France or something. Dang, oh my gosh. I was only thinking American. My little small American brain was just only thinking about my own country. Wow, that's crazy. I didn't even think about global.
Even with their massive expansion, the problem got far worse, and it was happening quicker than they could deal with. And over time, this soured the entire thing. With little oversight, a small proportion of hosts realized they could pretty much scam their guests with false advertising, awful rooms, and no cleaning, destroying Airbnb's reputation, and the problem would only get so much worse. But at first, it didn't matter to CEOs or the investors. They were only looking at the numbers, and they were outstanding. Between March 2009 and March 2019, Airbnb grew to over 4 million listings in over 190 countries and 34,000 cities. There have been over 1.5 billion guests that have used Airbnb, and has turned into...
What do you mean by 190 countries? How many countries are there? I'm about to say, brother, I thought there was only 190 something countries. I'm about to say. State of Palestine. Huh. Interesting.
To a household name. Many users have bought holiday homes, turned them into Airbnbs, and let the customers pay the home off. Others have turned it into a side business altogether, buying multiple homes just to run as a short-term rent space. Soon enough, competitors like Booking.com and Couchsurfing popped up. It was a new, exciting idea that solved a major problem, except it stopped solving problems as it grew. You see, Airbnb began to slip out of the hands of Chase, Nathan, and Joe. Due to its sheer size, it became impossible to control. The quality of the bookings dropped, and just like a franchise establishment, more and more complaints started flooding in as it grew. As a consumer and investor, you want to believe in these companies, but they're flying high one day and then they're nosediving the next. And even if they're solid companies, factors like interest rate hikes can completely erase your hard-earned profits. This is why 1 out of 3 millionaires still don't think they've saved up enough. Investors at this level barely even sniff public investments anymore. My subscribers are quietly following their lead. You guys are getting on board with the leading buyer on the art market. That's right, our sponsors are Masterworks.
What?
this is the one
Nah, bro.
picking.
How did he do
These
that,
are
bro?
real numbers. Get option stays went wrong in the site.
Oh, shoot.
A 2016 survey revealed that between 3% and 7% of all stays went wrong in one way or another. Because whilst Airbnb customers would do everything they can to save a couple pennies using the site, the hosts would take this to a whole new level, which is why reports of homes not looking like they do in pictures started popping up everywhere. So when a customer would show up, they'd often experience unclean spaces, damaged homes, and bed-bug-infested mattresses. Although Airbnb started off as a great way to save on costs while traveling, a way for anybody to turn their home into an earning opportunity, the market has grown too rapidly, and Airbnb's quality has gone down dramatically. You see, one of the initial attractions of Airbnb was the sense of community and trust it provided. It was about individuals helping out fellow travelers or renting out their extra space, but that completely disappeared. In fact, most of the time, you wouldn't even see the hosts, as they would leave the key in a code-protected box on the property, and at the same time, guests started having more and more bad experiences. In fact, the horror stories of Airbnb got so common that there's a whole website dedicated to them called Airbnb Hell. Most of the stories revolve around demanding hosts false advertising, or even disgusting rooms and homes on the site, like this guest, who was only told after they got there that they were expected to clean up and care for the host's dogs. Or
See,
another...
I was about to say, I didn't start just hearing about like the bad stuff with Airbnb until like recently, within the last 6 to 8 months.
Guest who found uncleaned evidence of drug use and dirty bed.
Before that, I just saw it as like, oh shit, you buy a house, you Airbnb it out, and then, you know what I'm saying, you good.
It's in the Airbnb. Another common theme is that Airbnb's customer service barely listens to complaints, doesn't offer refunds or compensation, and generally does nothing to help its customers. Meaning that 7% of all Airbnb visits that went wrong amounted to 2 million trips and vacations that were ruined, and 82% of respondents to the survey indicated Airbnb's customer service is very problematic. And this would mark the turning point in Airbnb's history, and would result in many of the issues we see today with the company. You see, the platform presented significant income generating potential, and so many people across the world would jump on Airbnb's opportunities. And these people would soon find that a single property, when switched from long-term to short-term letting on the app, could yield twice the revenue. With a steady stream of short-term tenants, owners could potentially reinvest their earnings into purchasing additional properties to replicate the model. However, this surge in short-term rentals adversely impacted the market for long-term leases, leading to increased demand and higher rental prices for traditional tenants. The negative effect also hit hotels, as this is their playground, and while many preferred Airbnb to a hotel still had to accommodate services like security, pool cleaners, general cleaners, etc. to existing guests. Even though their hotels were not running at full capacity anymore, so prices were again increased or services were scaled down to compensate for the loss. For hosts, the money came in, the guests paid minimal rental, and the app charged a mere 3%. However, the problem with this is that over an extended time frame, the prices would go higher in peak season, and hosts would include cleaning fees as they did not have the time to clean after every guest left. And because there was so many—
I'm gonna say, one of my homeboys, he does Airbnb and stuff like that, and his Airbnb is in a whole other state. So like he can't clean after every single guest and all of them are there. But he has cleaners and stuff that go into the house. And then he has this he's tapped in with this cleaning company and stuff. And they'll go into the house like after every guest and then like go in, clean the whole house and all that shit. And then I think he's still doing good, but like I did hear some stuff about like, you know what I'm saying, Airbnb's current state.
Many members, all with different prices, the market became saturated. What was once a great cost-effective way to stay in a room had become a service that was running at the same price as hotels, because hosts would include the price of cleaning services and app fees in the price. And as demand grew for Airbnb and as—
Now that's a finesse. I ain't gonna lie, that's a finesse, bro. You should just be taking the money that you're making there, use it on the cleaners, because then you could pay the cleaners, you know what I'm saying, and then have the price, and like you wouldn't be making as much as you used to be making, but like it would still like even out, especially if you're using Airbnb to pay off the house, you know what I'm saying, like eventually it would still like work out in his favor type shit.
As brand recognition across the world skyrocketed, there was market saturation and people could up the price. And hotels quickly caught onto this fact and began to make their rooms more homely, and with a bunch of extra services that Airbnb—
Bro, I ain't gonna lie, bro. Hotels been getting I ain't gonna lie, bro. Hotels been looking kind of good lately. I ain't gonna cap, bro. A lot of the hotels I've been going to within the last year, almost 2 years, bro. Last 2 years, all the hotels I've been going to, bro, they're looking way better than they used to be back in like 2019, like pre-COVID hotels. Hotels nowadays are way like, bro, I ain't gonna lie, bro. That shit
accommodate. So their appeal would slowly win back the market. They didn't charge extra for cleaning services. They had a restaurant and a bar on the premises, room service, car service, and good security. With hotels being safer, there weren't creepy, predatory Airbnb hosts down your neck. There was a certain safety in numbers that a hotel provides that Airbnb doesn't.
But this was the first of many issues for Airbnb. With Airbnb's rise in many other countries, new problems would develop and have to be resolved in order for this platform to work in all countries. Firstly, the obvious language barrier issue had to be worked out, as this could cause a lot of unhappy guests. Space invasion, time zone problems, and personal hygiene would all need to be taken into account for a host to provide the best for their guests. However, hotels already had taken this into account, and for the most part had it down to a fine art.
Guests who don't know how to run the app in the correct way might expect to have the place to themselves, but end up sharing accommodations. Guests would steal, break property, or cause disturbances with neighbors, which would then result in unhappy hosts. Homeowners associations in many countries put their foot down with penalty fees to stop Airbnb from functioning in a complex. Sometimes the property was rented for an actual party.
Alright, but like, how do you enforce that though? Like, how do you enforce like, alright, Airbnb, like your Airbnb and your a room or something in your complex, like how do you enforce that? You know, maybe like, because I mean, well, actually no, a lot of complexes have guest parking, so like you might not be in your parking spot, but they got guests over there, or even like you have the guest parking. Oh, if you have the guest parking your shit, I guess, but there just should be no way that they know that, unless they're checking their cameras all the time and like, oh, there's people going in and out with a bunch of bags all the time. Like, that's just they just on dick and they're bored, bro. That's weird, but yeah, I mean.
Will complain of the noise and disturbances. Some clever hosts work the penalty fees back into the cost of the rental, and so then that would be another problem for the app. But one of the key problems here was that since the market had become so saturated, homeowners who had multiple homes were not able to make payments on all their properties, as the demand was not in their favor anymore. This became such a problem that certain countries made new laws to limit the numbers of properties one could own. Hosts at Airbnb would also cut back on things like internet or daily cleaning, and not update the app. This would then reflect badly as false advertising, and the app would get negative feedback on the property, leaving the guests upset. And the host was obviously cutting back as the demand had diminished, and since he was not making enough money to justify the cost for extra services, they would become frustrated as well.
This is what one California homeowner called a living nightmare. Watch as this couple roams the Santa Cruz house, rummaging through the refrigerator cabinets, the homeowner standing on the side, helpless.
Do you feel like a prisoner in your own home?
Absolutely. I have 8 security cameras in my house right now.
33-year-old Poonam Sandhu renting her master bedroom to this couple through Airbnb last month.
Airbnb sacrificed all the benefits of a hotel for a cheaper cost. But with today's cleaning fees, admin costs, Airbnb now taking their 17% and skyrocketing rent, and they've lost their affordability as well. But all of this isn't the worst part about Airbnb. Instead, you need to look at what it's done to rental markets and the housing situation wherever it's gotten a grip. Now, the basic stats are bad. According to a 2017 study, for every 1% that Airbnb listings go up in a city or a town in the US, rents and house prices go up by around 0.02%. The number seems small at first, but with Airbnb's massive growth over the years, it's added up to big increases in people's monthly costs. Even today, bookings through the platform are still growing. And that's according to the company itself. In the first quarter of 2023, listings went up by 19% overall. Going by the study, that means Airbnb pushed home prices and rental prices up by 0.5% in those 3 months alone. In specific cases, it's even worse. In New York, property values rose around 6 to 11% every time Airbnb listings in the city doubled. Great for landlords and corporate homeowners, awful for renters and everyone else in the bottom 90%. Now, if Airbnb had stayed as a way for people to rent out their empty rooms to backpackers, then it wouldn't have impacted things as much. Instead though, the site is full of corporate landlords, specifically buying up tons of properties to put straight onto the site. Over 50% of the hosts on Airbnb own multiple properties. Lots own far more than them. And you can see the appeal for these landlords. They're just taking advantage of the opportunity. By getting the customers to clean up once they're done, they need pretty much no input from the owner. This benefit comes with much higher profits than traditional renting. That's even with Airbnb's massive 17% cut on every single transaction. Every large city where Airbnb operates is full of these ghost properties now. Homes and houses sectioned off for the short-term rentals. London alone had over 80,000 listings on the site, most of which were for the whole property. Every home that gets turned into one of these Airbnb properties is one less house on the actual housing or rental market. Some Airbnbs are even run illegally out of affordable social housing, which should be reserved for people who need a home. And the more the platform grows, the more it eats into the
place. I love it in school.
Which should be reserved for people who need a home. And the more the platform
for $700 a night, though, I ain't gonna lie, you could suck my toe, bro. That's crazy. I like the aesthetic though. I like how it looks. Like, I'd live in a place like this. Yeah, I would. This could be like a spot that I could stream at. Fact.
Grows, the more it eats into the market,
Castles.
pushing locals and regular people out of the market.
You got castles on Airbnb? $600. What the $100? What the fuck? Putting that in the notes section, bro. Putting that in the notes, bro. I'm staying in a castle Airbnb, bro. I'm staying in an Airbnb castle, bro. Overnight. 24 hours in an Airbnb castle.
Children, as they're growing up, they can't afford to buy houses. So therefore they have to move out of the area. It's killing the area. Second housing, short-term rentals, Airbnb, no.
Outside of the big cities, it can be even worse. Towns that rely on tourism have seen their housing markets destroyed by Airbnb. For these places, the profits from running an Airbnb are so much higher and easier to get than traditional renting that they've overtaken them in sheer numbers. The result is towns where thousands or tens of thousands of homes go unoccupied for most of the year. Summer rolls around and they all fill up with Airbnb customers. Then a few months later, the people on holiday leave and it goes back to being dead again. Meanwhile, local people either can't rent these places out or can't afford rent and housing costs with such a massive hit to the supply. It took governments way too long to figure out that this was happening, and even longer for them to do anything about it. And it shouldn't have been so hard for a lot of these big cities. The sector is so unregulated that massive proportions of the properties are illegal. In LA, for example, the city could have earned between $50 and $300 million in fines from prosecuting illegal Airbnb listings. That's not over decades either. Those are the figures for 2022 alone. It's like this across the entire world. But one of the reasons Airbnb is finally starting to come undone is that governments are wisening up to the free money they could be taking. Tons of cities like Berlin have all but banned these empty Airbnb homes, although the laws are still tricky to enforce. What's worse for Airbnb though is that the law breaking goes straight to the top. With how unregulated the whole industry has become, they've taken every opportunity to dodge taxes and laws wherever possible. Italy is just the latest country to go after them. They're planning to seize $835 million off of the company based on tax evasion alone. It's a great example that other countries should be following. But with how eager Western countries have been to let tech giants dodge billions in taxes every year, it's unlikely other countries will follow suit. What they can't ignore though is the awful effects of Airbnb on their cities and their housing markets.
Damn. It's tough, bro. Let's get the wait list and events of blue chip. Fairly small city, but Airbnb started at the time. I was not studying. Couch surfing Airbnb was not the same idea. Instead of paid a little to the host. Same spirit though, open point. The funny thing is, hotels are now cheaper in some cases. I had a 3-day trip coming up. It was $900 for Airbnb. Found a hotel that included buffet breakfast for $480. So I mean, like, hey, the opposite effect kind of, you know what I'm saying, happened, bro. Hotel experience has gotten better, and people who want to just stay in a home because their aesthetic doesn't match a hotel, then hey, bro, let them go to let them stay in a house, bro, for extra money. You know what I'm saying? Because they gonna pay it regardless. They're gonna pay for the aesthetic, and they're not gonna pay for the actual, you know what I'm saying, the price of what they actually are paying for. You know. But yeah, that's good though. That's good. This is a really good video. Really good, really well informed video too. I feel smarter after watching that.